We could. All right. Welcome back to the Sip My Thoughts podcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you for listening, subscribing, everything, just all of the support that I've gotten so far. Tonight and going forward, um, if you all have been listening to the podcast, I mean, you might have heard the Protect the Black Woman series, and I feel like the traction and the conversations that were had really allowed for some interesting discourse between black men, black women, and then I brought everyone together for like a roundtable type discussion, and everyone was able to, either air out their grievances or learn more about what the other side was saying and how we can be effective partners for one another. But I wanted to continue the conversation, but continue it in a different type of way. So I've created a new series, and I really just wanted to discuss something that I don't think we really lean into. You're born and you look at your birth certificate, and immediately you're given an identity, and you know who you are. But do you really know who you are? Is what I'm really wondering. So we just recently passed the threshold for 10 years, which was a 10-year anniversary. I believe it was February 26th of 2012, which has been 10 years since Trayvon Martin was killed in Florida. And I was sitting in my car while I was doing some laundry, and I was just thinking to myself, that was a moment for me as a 22-year-old at that time to where I really realized that I was black. Now, you might say, you wake up every day, you look in the mirror, it's obvious, once you're looking back at your reflection, that, well, your race, or, how you identify. But until you're really put in a situation to where you really have to really lean in and have those tough conversations and experiences, I think that is a moment that is pivotal when you really realize what that means in this world. So the title of this series, obviously, who it's been, um, I guess I would say inspired by, definitely inspired by. But the title of this series is "When Did You Realize You Were Black?" So I have two guests on. I have uh, Mr. Russell J. Ledet, and I also have Mr. Derek Francis on this evening. And again, I just want to thank y'all for coming on and wanting to have this conversation, because I think that there are definitely some similarities and differences in realizing when we actually realized that we were black. But yeah, I think I'll just start there. So, Russell, let me ask you this: when did you realize um, you were black personally, and when did you realize you were black professionally?
That's a good question, T man. I'm gonna answer the first one first. I think I realized personally that I was black when I was a young boy. Um, and I think that was because I grew up around my grandmother, and my grandmother couldn't read or write. Um, she grew up on a sugarcane field. Um, in the, if you can imagine, like in the very, very, very deep South. Um, and the way she would talk on the phone sometimes, when she was talking to a bill collector or maybe the hospital or something like that, was night and day from the way she would talk to me and my cousins and my mom and my aunts and uncles. It was like two different people were talking, you know. And then she would always tell me like, you know, you can't be talking crazy when you're talking to white folks. That's literally the way the conversation would go. And you know, T, you from the deep South, you know how those conversations go. Um,
Definitely.
and also, like, I'll never forget My mom had like a 1990 or 1991 like Nissan Maxima or something like that. Oh, way back in the gap. This when Barry White was still pumping. And I was in the backseat reading. I love to read. And my mom was driving and my grandmother was sitting in the front seat. And my grandmother said something to the effect of, "You need to stop doing all that reading before you end up like them white folks." And I was like, what does that mean? And I still haven't really come to an understanding of what she really meant by that. But I think what she was saying is that my lived experience as a black man is supposed to be very different, even from an educational perspective. And I guess she really was reflecting on her own experience because she didn't know how to read or write. So I think to some degree, her expectation was that maybe that's the position we should be in too. Obviously it was the 90s and my mama was really pushing for me to, read as much as I could. So I think a lot of me learning personally that I was black just came from the way I experienced life through the eyes of my grandmother. I think professionally, it's evolved in how I identify as a black man. I think early on, when I first went to the United States Navy, I really identified as a black man just trying to get out the ghetto. Like I was just trying to make it out. That was it. That was the goal. The goal was just to make it out. And now I identify as a black man with a voice who can really speak for and speak to our culture in spaces where our culture doesn't normally permeate, like medicine, And so I think my identity as a black man has evolved. And it hasn't always been the same. Or maybe my role as a black man has changed and not necessarily my identity as a black man. Also, I'm a black father now. So that plays a very different role, especially with my daughter playing a very white sport like tennis. So it's got some layers to it. And this is a conversation we could go on forever. And that's why I'm really excited to have this conversation.
How about you, Derek?
All right. I know looking at my complexion, it's a much more interesting question for me. So I'll start by answering 3 questions for you. So I'll do you one. So initial doubts were when I was born. I know the entire hospital was laughing because my dad, who's a visibly black man, he's mixed. So he's half white, half black. My mom is about as white as snow. I'm born, blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect Aryan example in the hospital. So of course, the roars laughter was in the operating room, yada yada yada. And then of course over time, I turned like about 5-6 years old, and that's when that blonde hair, perfect Aryan hair kind of morphed, and I grew an afro. So like I had like a big bushy afro as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think personally, I first knew like I was black is I was going to the gym with my pops right when I turned like 14, 15 years old. And of course, we didn't have much family in California. So at the gym, like all the brothers at the gym, they were my family. So like just how they treated me, approached me, that was my family. And, they really took me in, I think like they would like their sons, and like really just kind of helped to mold me. That's where I was. That's where I lived. That's where, my brothers and uncles were. It's like, hey, uncle, and yeah, that was really kind of the point where, I knew that was in me. So I knew that was a part of my identity. It was something I had to embrace, even though my complexion shows something different. I could blend and easily conceal myself if I wanted to. But it's just, especially somebody, like me, who could be representative of how the population could look 20, 40 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
When, we got a lot more mixed folks, walking among us, like to really come out and say, I am that. Or if I hear somebody saying out of pocket around me that, I need to come forward and say, you know what, you can't be saying that because there are folks among you who have that blood and flowing through their veins, and I'm not going to accept that. It's part of it. And then professionally, think the most powerful thing I really ran into is, so right now I'm working with the family business. I'm a patent agent, father's, black patent attorney. We worked our tails off on a written legal opinion for due diligence. And we presented it before basically the attorney for an investor. And no matter what, they wouldn't accept the opinion. No matter what, no matter how we wrote it, no matter how we drafted it, no matter what we did, no matter how much we pleaded to get it accepted, it just wouldn't, just wouldn't go through. So that's right then and there. My pops, he said, you know what? Let's get another law firm to do it. Gray hair, established, white attorney. Let's, present this thing. Opinion was basically, in essence, exactly the same thing. Went through without a hitch. Mm-hmm. And, that was like, that's when it really clicked. And I'm like, there are going to be moments in this profession, no matter what you say, no matter what you do. It's just, nobody's going to say a thing. It's never going to be brought up in the open, but it's just going to be there. And it's there. And somehow you're going to have to explain to your clients. And they're going to be like, no, it couldn't possibly be that. But it was the most interesting moment in my professional career I think I've ever had in my entire life. But I got to see it through that lens. And that was something that like really stuck with me. And even though like, sure, like I could walk in this field and probably be fine if I never revealed who I really was, right? I could easily conceal myself. But the thing is, I've gotten so accustomed to being that razor thin margin of error that's given to folks of color in professional situations, and that you just got to adhere to that. And it does just, makes you a better professional, but it's just something that's just never left me ever since I've entered this profession. So I think, yeah, that's when it clicked.
Definitely. That's powerful. Russell, I think that actually goes back to a conversation that me and you were having, but I don't think we ever finished it. Me and you were talking about code switching. I'm not sure if you remember that, but I think, yeah, I think that's profound in what you were saying, Derek. And I also think something really profound that you said is that, you could easily just, parade around, if you wanted to, and, things will go off without a hitch. You will be able to get things done quickly and easier, if that was the way that you decided to approach that situation. And I think it's very profound. And I think it says a lot about you that you know enough about the professional environment to know that these types of things and these types of situations are actually happening. So kudos to you, first of all, for being able to acknowledge that first, recognize it, and then do something about it. I think that's very important because, that's not always the case today. I mean, I feel like in the professional environment, there are a lot of ways in which, you do things to survive, i.e. code switching. And I think it's very dope that, you recognize that and you pointed that out. So just to give you all my story really quick, like I said, I remember where I was when the Trayvon Martin verdict was read. And I feel like the thing that Black parents do well, and I've told my mother this because me and her, we're the ones who more so have these types of conversations. My dad is always included, but me and my mom really goes in depth with these types of conversations. I feel like Black parents do a good job at shielding the world from us as long as they possibly can. And then, at some point or another, we're going to experience the world in some shape, form, or fashion. It's just going to happen. And that case for me was my introduction to be like, oh, I'm Black. Like, I went to a historically Black college. Obviously you get the whole experience, everything that comes along with being Black, obviously at a historically Black college. Like, you get the whole experience. But that was the moment for me where I was just like, okay, I'm Black. I realize that and I recognize it. Professionally, I just remember being in a conference room in 2018 or early 2019, and we were at a meeting, and the company was just getting a new VP. And I'm a journalist, so if you're watching your local news every day, I think you realize either from a print perspective, broadcast does a good job of inserting diversity in there. But if you still look around the newsroom, you'll still kind of realize that there isn't enough diversity in these newsrooms. But I just so happen to look around at everyone in the room, and then it just hit me that I was the only black face in the room at that particular point in time. Now, as far as other journalists employed by the company, I mean, they were there, but we were still in the minority. And I just remember vividly being in this room, and I looked around the room to my left and to my right, and I was the only black face in that room. So for me, professionally, that was when it hit me professionally that I'm black. Like, I'm a misnomer in this room. My voice is valued. I always felt like my voice is valued, but I felt like, that was just my seminal moment of me realizing that I was black professionally. My bosses listened to me. I don't think I was promoted like I should have been while in those positions, but that was just a moment for me. Russell, you were talking about your daughter playing a predominantly white sport, and I just want to see if you can kind of just talk a little bit about how you are teaching your daughter as she goes through, playing tennis, and what types of conversations are you having with her?
Yeah, man. I think for me personally, one conversation I always have with my daughter is it's a very honest conversation. I always tell her you need to be twice as good. You don't have the luxury of being able to play around. Um, because everything you do is perceived as a problem. So you might as well be a real problem on a tennis course, so that the least they can do is compliment you on your game. And it's a white dominated sport. Even with Serena and Venus and Naomi Osaka and the Sloane Stevens and Madison Keys of the world, and you got so many, not so many. You have a representative portion of black athletes in tennis, but there's still a lot of racism at the younger levels. And there's a lot of disparity at the younger levels, if we call it what it is. I'll never forget we went to Mississippi for a tournament in a city called Ocean Springs, and my daughter was playing this little girl, and I didn't realize the little girl was the granddaughter of the guy who was running the tournament. And of course, at this time, I think Malia might have been 7 or 8 years old, and the little girl was like maybe 9 or 10. And so that was already problematic. The fact that, an older child was playing a younger child. But, I had already positioned Malia mentally to do her job, go out there. It does not matter how old the opponent is. You just go out there and play your game. And if you win, you win. And if you lose, you get better. And, the kid's grandfather started barking at Malia, just calling some erroneous calls, and just, everything she was doing was problematic before they even started the match. And so I kind of put a guy to the side and was like, hey man, what's your deal? Like, what's really your problem? And he was like, I just want to make sure that this is a fair match. And I was like, the little girl is like 2 years older than my child. What would make you think that in any way, shape, or fashion that, if anything, you shouldn't be worried? And I never forget, there was this really erroneous call with a ball being out, and of course Malia was like, the ball was clearly in, and whatever, and and she started crying about it, and I had to tell her in that moment, like, nah, this ain't the time to cry. I'm gonna need you to put it together and win this match. She ultimately lost the match. And I'm not willing to say that all of it is because, of the deleterious effects of the grandfather. and just the environment. But I think that played a huge contributing role. But I also told her, I'm gonna be honest with you, get used to it. Because whether you like it or not, this is reality, and daddy can't shield you from everything. I cannot possibly shield you from everything. I can try, but I don't even know if I want to. In some cases, I need you to be able to fight for yourself. And I need for you to be able to get knocked down and get back up. And I could talk about the systemic and structural problems, but at the same time, I'm gonna need for you to be strong enough to keep pushing, and resilient enough to keep pushing. And that's a hard conversation to have with your child. Of course, there are so many more scenarios. I never forget, my daughter, she had liked this little boy. She was going to school with, and the little boy was, he was white. And she told another one of her classmates that she was attracted to the boy. And the person she told it to was the little girl was white as well. And the little girl made the comment that, well, if I was a boy, I wouldn't be able to date you. And Malia said, well, why not? And she said, well, why not? Because you're black. And of course, I told Malia, I said, Malia, if it was me, I would have told him I wouldn't date you if you was dead. But but at the same time, I don't know if I was prepared at 11 years old. My daughter's 11 years old right now to respond properly to that comment from a classmate in 2022. But I also told her, Malia, it's as unfortunate as what that little girl said, is I can't shield you from the problems of the world. And that's a hard concept for children to understand. And I realized something. Every kid don't have this experience. As a matter of fact, every black kid don't have this experience, but definitely most white kids don't have this experience. They don't have these conversations that we're having right now because they don't have to. They should, but they don't have to. They need to, but they don't have to. As black parents and as black leaders and just as black individuals, we feel like it's something we need to have these conversations with our kids. Tyler, when you have kids, you're going to have those conversations with your kids. D, of course, you're going to have those conversations with your kids because you ain't going to have no other choice. I don't have no other choice when it's facing me in the face, so it's difficult, man. And I'm not saying I'm getting it right. I think this podcast gives us a platform to have this really nuanced conversation. But the reality of it is that as a parent, as a black man, as a black husband, every day I'm learning better how to respond to racist issues that I didn't even create. I'm not the reason why Plymouth came here. And I'm not even the reason why my ancestors came here. So it's hard, man. That's the reality of it. It's difficult.
Definitely. So Derek, working in the industry that you work in, your dad has been you said it's a family business, so I'm sure your dad, I don't want to speak for your dad. How did he prepare you to navigate the industry and everything that comes along with it? Like, how did he kind of prepare you for what you eventually stepped into?
Like I was talking about earlier, first off, very first lesson, you got to be better than perfect. Like, I've gotten the opportunity to see a lot of my colleagues work. I've seen like a lot of the things that they can get away with and submit as acceptable work. And he looked at that and said, this is completely unacceptable work. It's acceptable for some people, but not here and not for you ever. And, and it's just like that standard had already been set. So even though my complexion is fair, I was taught through the lens of, a black man. So I approach things in that manner. He said, just your standards for excellence have to be constantly high all the time. And of course, I'm grateful for that in the sense that, of course, it's made me a better professional in my field. But, it's kind of gotten me in a position where I could see, wow, this is what, folks of color have to go through in this industry just to, you know, be in a position to be good at it, let alone going into, these major law firms and making partner. I have yet to meet a Black partner in a law firm in all my time here. And I mean, there's a lot of other things that go into that, of course, nepotism and favoritism, among other things. And, realistically, just to work the number of hours to get to a position like that, for anybody is unfathomable. But I can imagine that for folks of color, it is. You pretty much just have to give up everything else, even if you want a shot at making it, even with, the possibility that there's just no guarantee of ever reaching that upper echelon. Just because, I've gotten to see kind of what's behind that veil. And it's, even more interesting, going to places and I guess code changing, blending, and then you can hear what folks really have to say behind the scenes. And I think that's the part that's kind of, being able to see both sides of the coin. That's really kind of molded, how I view things, and, being able to hear, from one side and being able to hear, what's spoken in the room, whispers under the breath, what's behind closed doors kind of stuff that really kind of shape my views and what I need to do and what my colleagues who are struggling or what they're going through. So in terms of, how to prepare, just constant, uninterrupted excellence is what's required.
Yeah. Do you all think that there are traumas that go along with realizing you are Black?
Yeah, man, I don't. Yeah, that's a loaded question to you, man.
We know the answer, but okay, so maybe a better question would be, is now that you know what these traumas, well, everybody doesn't recognize traumas the same. So I guess the question would be, what traumas do you realize that you face every day on a day-to-day basis? How do you go about facing those traumas? And what do you do to alleviate the pressure from those traumas?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna hop in on this one just because I think this is something that I truly just recently started working on. I think so Kendrick Lamar in To Pimp a Butterfly, at the end of it, there's a skit where he's speaking with Tupac. And while he's talking with Tupac, Tupac is talking about the length of time that a Black man has to buck the system, quote unquote. And then there's a period where he kind of loses that energy. And now he's just like, fighting to keep his family together, keep food on the table. He ain't really got the time or energy to, to focus on the things that, was I guess Malcolm X like when he was younger. I don't think I've hit that wall yet, and I'm well over 30. But I do understand what Kendrick and Tupac were talking about. But I've also come to realize that I can't allow myself to get all worked up and angry about every racist issue there is in this world, because I'm gonna have a heart attack.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to get wrapped up and riled up, especially when you understand the rights and the wrongs. You understand the history. Understanding the history makes it worse because you know how long it's been going on for, and you know how much of a repetition this is. And so, to that point, I think I'm at a place now where I say to myself, how much energy am I willing to invest in it? And then what is my goal? What is my goal in me, putting energy into this? And I think that's a very vital question to have because literally, I don't know when this podcast will come out. I got a feeling that it probably ain't gonna come out before next Friday. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this now. When it came down to picking where I would go or really deciding how I would rank where I wanted to go for residency, I took that into account, man. I remember back during this past Christmas in December 2021, I went to go visit my brother and sister, Stephanie and Derek, and we sat down, we were just chopping it up, and when I tell you I loved it, but what I loved wasn't how non-racist the culture felt, or how woke everybody was. What I felt like is that I was in a place where I just got to be me. Like I wasn't there to be the the racism savior, or I wasn't there to be on every DEI committee. I wasn't there to write the next article that was going to shift the way we think about being Black in medicine. Like I was just there, and I just got to exist, and that was amazing to enjoy. And I'll be honest with you, T, in an even larger context, like this was actually the first time in my life that that's something I desired. I desired to go to a place where I wasn't the Black hero, where I just got to breathe. Like I just got to be a dad, be a husband, be a brother, just spend quality time just existing. I think me and Derek were watching a basketball game one night, and not once did we have to bring up ethnicity. Like we just was just kicking it, with a brew in hand and some popcorn. Like it was simple living. And I'm not saying that that's me running away from the issues of the world, because I'm down for the cause and I'm willing to fight for the rest of my life, but I don't want to fight every day. And I realized personally, I could get so riled up and so caught up in it to where I'm willing to fight every day. And for me to protect myself, to be healthier, I have to ask myself, where can I be where I don't have to do that? Or at least I don't feel like I have to do that. That's not me running from the struggle. That's me managing my energy, because I got to be able to do this until I'm well into my 80s and 90s. And if I'm doing this every day, day in and day out, and pouring 1,000% energy into it, I'm probably not going to be able to last to my 80s and 90s. And even moreover, I wanted to go to a place where I was seen as Russell and not as Russell the activist. Yeah, that's a component of who I am, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to train. You know what I'm saying? I'm here to train as a pediatrician, here to train as an adult psychiatrist, here to train as a child psychiatrist, child and adolescent psychiatrist. But I don't want to train to be an activist right now. I've been being an activist all my life. I feel like for Black men, living is activism. I mean, we can all speak to that, right? That's what half this podcast is about. It's just the fact of living and existing and surviving past 30 is activism. That's activism in itself. And not being locked up in this, this cage bird system, that's a form of activism in itself. And I think self-preservation is something we have to get to, where we don't spend every waking moment talking about what the white man did to us, what the white woman did to us, what the white structures did to us, what structural racism has done to us, and get to a place where, how are we taking care of each other? How are we making sure that we straight? And how are we protecting ourselves from ourselves?
Definitely. That's powerful. Derek, I want to get to something that Russell just said, and I just want to know what you think about it. Russell said that I was just there and I got to exist. And I want to know, in your career field, in your career path, and not even just your career path, just your everyday, day-to-day life, are you able to just exist, you think? Like, how are you going about existing in the space that you're in?
It honestly took a long time to just exist. And I guess I'll kind of start from the beginning. It's kind of tough to always figure out where I stood. And that's kind of just something I've always dealt with ever since I was, little kid. There are some days where I had an existential crisis and I had no idea where I stood. And there are days where like I really didn't understand the concept of racism, because if I was both and there was no difference, then I didn't really understand. But it's just one of those things where eventually I began to accept myself more and more for who I was. And I guess I'll lead into a story that actually when I first met, Big Country Russell in lab. I remember he walked into lab. I imagine he's probably gonna feel like the odd man out. Everybody's gonna look at him funny and like, what's his big brother doing in this laboratory? and that was exactly how things turned out. And then of course when I saw him walk in, I was like, oh my god, one of my kind.
Yeah.
Like, while everybody else was probably giving him the stink, I was like, this is my source of comfort. I'm not leaving this corner of the room because I found somebody like me in a laboratory. And I was on cloud nine because I was actually training under Dr. Nkuze Golden, who was the first Black resident in the radiation oncology department at NYU. So in terms of like being in like heaven in a research environment, that's about as close as I could come.
Yeah.
And both are folks that I'm very blessed to have met at that point in my life, because it's just when you're surrounded by that much Black greatness, at that same period in time, I was just something I was blessed to enjoy immensely. So am I existing much better now? Now that I'm in my 30s, I get a sense of, actually, I think, now that racism is kind of done its ebbs and flows, it's never static. When Obama came in, I thought, okay, we were making good progress. But as you well aware, the longer his presidency went on, the worse it became, the more toxic it became. And then, of course, we all know where it all ended. So, yeah.
Definitely. That's it's interesting that you bring it up also, because I remember where I was. I think was 2008. Yeah. Man, that's really a really interesting point. I remember Jeezy had a mixtape out, and everybody was just driving around campus blasting "My President is Black." everybody was driving around the campus, like we were circling the campus. They were playing that loud as can be. It was just a really euphoric environment, and I think a lot of Black America would really look at that moment and be like, yeah, like I think this would have been the moment where they would have looked and said, or they would have realized in that particular point in time that they were Black. Like, I was 18 at the time, so I didn't really, I knew I had a Black president. That's really all I knew. I don't think we really, we really leaned into that moment. I feel like we were present in that moment, but that was a really interesting time where I thought that, and I was still pretty young as far as the whole political thing and things like that were concerned, but I think that was a point in time to where we were like, okay, I don't think we got lax, but I think we were aware that we had a Black president. I don't think that we thought that things were just going to automatically change overnight as far as racism and things like that were concerned. But I think we were more keenly aware that we had a Black president. And the more, as you said, there, like the more that his presidency continued, it was just like a bigger and bigger, darker cloud just kind of grew over the country. And then it now leaned into what we had this previous 4 years. And now it's still like a trickle down effect. I feel like we're still feeling the effects of the Obama presidency, but not in the way in which we might think we would be. Like that pretty much uncovered a scab. And then once 2016 came around, that scab was just full blown infected. And once that scab, continued to be, even more affected, and now we're here, we still have more than what? It's 14 years almost of just trying to still figure this thing out. But I guess what I would say is that in this existence of where we are today, um, I think you made a really interesting point, Russell, when you say you don't want to fight all day and you don't want to be activist Russell all day. What should we be looking for, or in recognizing that we're black? Um, where should we be trying to take this? I mean, we have a younger generation coming along behind us. Um, how do we try to make them more so aware of the things that we're facing on a day-to-day basis, and just how do we go about doing it? I guess I would say.
Yeah, I don't know if I think everybody has to pick and choose what battle they're gonna fight.
That's
Every person can't fight everybody, every battle. I
mm-hmm.
think the one that I've put my stake into is being an inspiration for the future. You know, um, I recently wrote, and I shared it with both y'all. Obviously, Bootless Part One was written about a year ago and really told a story of what it's like to be a black man in every possible professional setting you could think of, from military to graduate school and getting a PhD at a #1 medical school in the country to going into medicine and business. I done did it all. Fatherhood, husbandhood, and telling that story. And now I've really committed myself to how can I produce something that's going to inspire the next generation in a way that's acceptable to them? Like, how do I convince them that you can go down this road of becoming a physician, a lawyer, a scientist, whatever, and you could bring your culture with you. You don't have to be whitewashed to get to where you're trying to go. You just don't. And that's really what I'm pushing with the origin story, Bootless 2, is really just the idea that I got here and I didn't lose my culture in the process. That's the one thing that I'm the most proud of. Is that throughout my academic accomplishments and every other kind of accomplishment, every accolade, from being featured on CNN and Good Morning America and everything else, to my academic accomplishments, the publications and everything else, having 16 years of marriage, like all these things that I'm supposed to be proud of. The one thing that I'm most proud of is that I did all that and I didn't lose my cultural identity. I didn't lose my connection with my blackness. And I took my blackness with me everywhere, even if it happened at the cost of other people being uncomfortable and other people shunning me. I've been in places where for sure they've been like, yo, can you not wear some really loud orange LeBron shoes? Or can you not put those big Beats headphones on? Can you not come in with basketball shorts and a t-shirt on? But then everybody cool with somebody coming in with yoga pants on. Nobody got a problem with somebody coming in with some yoga tights on and a T-top. They got a problem with me coming on with basketball shorts and a t-shirt with some LeBron tennis shoes on. And everybody got a problem with my Beats headphones being big, but nobody got a problem with anybody fuzzy headphones. And the sound quality is night and day. So, I think at the expense of some people, I might have lost some opportunities because I kept my blackness and I kept my culture. But I won the race. I'm everything I wanted to be. I'm everything I wanted to be. I wanted to be a veteran. I'm a veteran. I wanted to be a dad. I'm a dad. I wanted to be a husband. I'm a husband. I wanted to be a doctor. I'm a doctor. I wanted to be a scientist. I'm a scientist. I wanted to publish in big journals. I published in big journals. I wanted to gain awards. I did it. Everything I wanted to do, I accomplished. And there were probably opportunities that I missed. But those opportunities aren't that evident right now because I'm winning. Like Issa Rae said, it's a me season right now. So I think in the larger context is that, yeah, in those micro environments, people probably not gonna like you for your hairstyle, or they're not gonna like you for the twang in your voice, or the way you say something, or the fact that you bring up the thing nobody else is willing to ask a question about, or the way you roll your neck when you're really intense about something. But guess what? It don't matter in the big scheme of things. You're gonna end up where you're supposed to be. But it's so important that if you do identify as black, that's not something that you compromise, because that's who you are. Like, and you gotta bring who you are to where you going, because that's how you got there. I remember my grandmother telling me something to the extent of, when God made you, wasn't nobody else around, and everybody else is taken, so you might as well be yourself. And to that point, I think oftentimes we are the ones willing to relinquish our identity, our culture, our whole self in the workplace for fear of losing our job or losing out on the opportunity. And that, I don't know if I could quantify what that does to us spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, but it can't be good. I can't suppress the hood in me for 24 hours. I just can't. It don't work. I'm gonna go ahead and bring, hey, look, this is what you gonna get. This is what you gonna get. And I mean, D was the first person to call me big country. But bro, I was big and I was country. And I'm still big and I'm still country. And I'm also really accomplished. Like super accomplished. So you gonna get all this, bro. Like, you ain't gonna just get, you know what I'm saying? I'm hitting like Lizzo. You gonna get the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? So, that's just where I'm at with it, man. And I think that allows me to exist. It allows me to breathe. I don't have to code. I can't code switch no more. The switch broke. The switch broke. And that means that at sometimes I'm gonna lose out on certain opportunities. But I don't care at this point. It don't matter to me. Because I'm happy. I'm happy being me. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Derek, what do you think about how can we make the next generation of black boys and girls, even biracial boys and girls also, how can we get them to lean into their identity, being confident in themselves and who they are, and possibly inspiring the next activists in them? How can we just get them being more comfortable with themselves in your eyes?
Be honest, more exposure to people like Russell, somebody who wears Beats headphones to lab, like seeing folks at that cultural identity, walk into, professional environments and be accepted for who they are, going into a law firm and having like hair that isn't, conforming to the normal hairstyle and their slick back, all that, typical hairstyles you see there. And I think, a prime example, something that really really bothered me. I don't know if you heard about that sister who jumped out a window in New York.
Yeah.
She had everything, and I mean everything. Won a pageant, went to law school, was on partner track at a law firm, did interviews on E, and she took her life. And it's just something that deep down inside, why? But up here, I kind of knew what the answer was. Like, what did she suppress to get there? What compromised her happiness so much that it would push her to do something like that? And I think that kind of goes back to, what Russell was talking about, which was you can't suppress that for 24 hours. You can't suppress that for years, and it's just going to eat away at you. So I think it's just so important for the next generation to know that and to be yourself, because you could have everything, like do it all, like accomplish everything you wanted to, but you sold yourself down the river a long time ago. So what are you at the end of that path? And my grandparents, they passed along a saying to me, thank God for unanswered prayers. Sometimes even more so than the answered ones, because sometimes there are just doors you're not supposed to go through. But sometimes it cracks open and you want to stick your foot in it and you want to put your shoulder into that door and try and lean into it and push through, and you're through it and you find out what's on the other side and you wish you could go back through that door. But unfortunately, sometimes life does not work like that. And sometimes you got to go through it, take it, there'll always be a couple of wrong doors, but ideally you want to go through the ones that you're meant to go through. And a part of that is letting that all go out, being comfortable with your identity, and walking into situations and being okay that some opportunities just aren't for you, even though they look fantastic up front. It's actually it's like a beautiful exotic sports car that has a whole ton of issues underneath.
Mm-hmm.
You end up with a lemon and you're stuck with it.
Definitely. I think another thing in realizing, in the realization or coming to the realization that you're Black, I think you are also a really good example of there's not one way to be Black. And I think there are a lot of times we, just based on social media chatter and things that you see, conversations being had. I know, just speaking to me, growing up, I was always told that I was too proper. I talked too proper. I just like reading a lot of books. that was just me. So I guess when I spoke, I spoke a certain type of way where kids were maybe offended, or they just wonder why I talked or I spoke the way that I did. And I think that we can get caught up in just thinking that there is one way to be Black, and there isn't. So what do you all think about that?
No, man, I think, Derek and I are a perfect example. I never forget, me and Derek went to Five Guys. And, we were sitting down eating. And a guy was coming to visit us. And he was like, I told him in the text, I was like, hey, man, my brother is, he gonna be here with me. And of course, the guy was like, when he got there, he was like, where your brother at? I was like, he right there. And then he was like, nah, like, really? I was like, yo, he Black. He was like, man, come on, man, stop playing with me, man. I didn't know you was about all these jokes. And I remember telling him something to the effect of, there's an ocean of colors that fit Black. There's a whole ocean of colors that fit Black. And I was like, and you can't tell me different, And of course he sat down and it kind of hit him, like what was going on or whatever. But I think to that point, we got to get away from this idea. I mean, let's recognize something so that we don't sound, uneducated in this conversation. Race in itself is a made-up construct.
Absolutely.
It's a made-up construct. And I think the biggest indicator of what your race is honestly how society treats you. Mm-hmm. The people who struggle the most are people with melanin in their skin. Derek is able to sit in certain rooms and allow people to have conversations and just chill. Like, he don't have to say nothing. And he could walk out and give me the whole tea. Like, he could give me the whole plan that they would never tell me, like, not in a million years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, there's a cultural identity that's there that isn't visibly evident. It's not visibly evident. If he and I walk down the street, the first thing I'll say, oh, there's a white guy meeting with a black guy, or a black guy meeting with a white guy. And that's a lot of the superficial thinking, but it's also the way we taught in society to view people. I think there's a huge treatment component to how Black people, or really how minorities are identified. You take into account, like, Trevor Noah just did this recent monologue where he was talking about how it's funny how all of a sudden race is playing a role in this Ukraine-Russia thing. Especially with the refugee situation, right? How open armed certain parts of Europe are willing to take in Ukrainian refugees. But then people, in the way they describe it, this is Europe. This is not Syria. This is not Libya. That's obvious, because if anybody takes geography. They know that they're not the same place.
Mm-hmm.
But what they really getting at is the identity of the people who live there.
Exactly.
You know, and that's a tough conversation to have because on one hand, you obviously have to have empathy for a really tragic situation in this war in Ukraine. But at the same time, you can't help but recognize that racism is literally global. You know, a lot of times we make this argument that it's just it's the United States issue. Nah, it's a global issue,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really at the ethos of how we operate as a global society. We are very much global, and you know, and where we are now. Ask anybody who's dealing with gas prices right now. Ask anybody driving. You know, and so I think to that point, man, it behooves us to think deeper of how much of a cultural identity there is, and not so much visibly how people identify. Because I don't know if everybody, who's to say that your gauge is better than mine in terms of identifying who's black visibly? How do you who's the what's your threshold for somebody being visibly black? That's a crazy question to ask, isn't it? That's a really crazy question to ask.
Definitely.
You're gonna stand next to somebody else and they'd be like, nah, bro. That's essentially the brown paper bag test.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I mean that's just where I'm at on it, man.
Yeah. I think a really interesting point, especially when you talk about race as a social construct. I remember when I was a graduate student at the University of Mississippi, and I was helping a young lady with her thesis, and her thesis had something to do with race. And I remember having a conversation. We were right behind the graduate school, and there was another white young lady who was sitting to the right of us, while me and the other young lady were sitting at the table talking. And when we were talking about race, I was just telling her, you know, I won't say that I didn't understand racism, but what I told her was that for people to just feel like you have the audacity or the power to feel that you have dominion over someone, who doesn't look like you, I think that it's stupid, first of all, because if I told her, if I cut you and you cut me, what color is the blood? Your blood ain't white. My blood ain't black.
Nah.
So why do you feel that you should have dominion over me just because your skin is ivory and mine isn't? So when it comes to race being a social construct, that was just an example that struck me. When you said that, and yeah, the Ukrainian thing, like it's really interesting to see, all of those white men keeping those black families from trying to get on that bus or whatever that was that they were trying to get on in order to escape. And I saw something that said that some of those people might have died, but I don't want to spread no fake news if I didn't read that for sure. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Derek, have you ever read The Spook Who Sat by the Door?
No, I haven't.
I think I'm gonna suggest for you to read that. I would really like to have a conversation with you after reading that book. But yeah, I didn't want to belabor or prolong this conversation. I feel like we've had a lot of really good dialogue. Final thoughts? I'll start with you, Derek.
Well, first off, I appreciate you for having me on here. Yeah, of course, these conversations need to be had. I appreciate being a part of it. We could go on and on about, race as a social construct. It really is everywhere. Like, it doesn't matter where you go. My wife is Puerto Rican. Going to Puerto Rico, I realize it's in some ways even worse down there, just because the stratification is down there, and I've been to Japan. It's really bad there. So if you think racism is bad here in the US, it is horrendous there. And, it's just, at the end of the day, it's all about melanin. And that's kind of, It's what I've learned because I've gotten the been in the fortunate position of being raised by a black father with fair skin. So I've been raised with a very interesting lens, and I guess it offers me a really unique perspective between a lot of cracks, and to hear what is whispered, in closed doors. So, in that essence, yeah, I'm glad we're having these conversations.
I just want to say I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate you being willing to speak when most people would just exist in those particular spaces and just conform. And existing and conforming, while you're hearing someone doing something wrong or saying something wrong, that's totally unacceptable. So I definitely applaud you for having the wherewithal, to make sure that your voice is being heard in these particular spaces and rooms where, someone like myself or Russell might not be able to navigate as easily. So your voice is definitely important. And, I'll just applaud you for doing the necessary work, when others may not do that. So definitely kudos to you for doing that. What about you, Russell?
Yeah, man. I think obviously the conversation of when did you realize you were black? It's unfortunately different for everybody. And I say unfortunate because I feel like almost every time I've heard a story of when did you realize you were black, it was a negative thing. There's always something terrible that happened. When I was like, oh, that was the moment I realized I was black. Mm-hmm. Somebody mistreated me in some sort of way. Something unfortunate happened to me was the moment I realized I was black. I have rarely heard of very positive experiences in which people came to the realization that they were black. That means that the way by which we realize that we are black is probably equivalent to the moment we realize that the world is going to treat us different based on something that we can't even control. That's what that question is really asking. That question of when did you realize you were black? I feel like what it's really getting at is when did you realize that the world was going to treat you different based on something that you cannot control? And that's a really tough realization.
Definitely.
Because for some of us, it happens at such a young age, and it's something that you got to carry with for the rest of your life. I guess in a perfect world, we'd be 99 years old, getting ready to die when we would really find out. Or maybe some of us would never find out because the world would treat us right from day one. That's what you really want. You got to go. Your job is your job title is to go find somebody who doesn't even know that they black, because the world has treated them so well that that's not even an issue for them. Because for many of us, I mean, like I said, that question is really getting at when did it dawn on you that the world was going to treat you differently? And by differently, I mean negatively, based on something that you have no control over. That's an unfortunate experience that almost every last one of us goes through. Even the people with the lightest complexion go through that. You had a conversation of light skin versus dark skin, the yellow bone versus the red bone, right? That's crazy that we have all of these iterations of our skin color. And it plays such a huge role in the way that we interact with each other, the way we evaluate people, the way we realize their worth, how we willing to treat them amongst each other. Willie Lynch letters did a problem. They a problem. Willie Lynch letters did a number. Slavery did a number. Global media efforts did a number. Global media efforts are still doing a number. Think about the way Black men, Black women, Black people in general are portrayed in the media. It is bonkers. So, we got some work to do, man. And I can sit here and get tied up in it. But right now, I'm really happy because, I'm a week away from match. I'm about to find out. I'm about to graduate from medical school, graduate from business school. I'm thriving. My kids are healthy. My wife is healthy. I'm a black man who's happy, so I'm not going to get too tied up in all the issues that honestly I'm going to try to put a dent in, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my life letting that be the only thing I focus on, and that's my thoughts.
Definitely. We can end it there, man. I just think definitely thank y'all for coming on and being a part of this. This is heavy stuff, but I feel like these are the types of conversations that need to be had. I feel like look on social media and there are a bunch of different iterations of different conversations spanning, gossip, sports, entertainment. But, sometimes we need to talk about the tough stuff
Yeah.
and, the things that affect us, the next generation, and just generations to come. And I think that this is a necessary realization that a lot of us probably haven't thought much about, but it's necessary. And I was just really curious and really wondering about the first time people just really realized it. And like I said, I think, especially me working in media, it's important to have these types of conversations to know where we've been and where we're going. You won't get this type of conversation on, um, mainstream media platforms. And this was one of the reasons why I created my platform to have these types of conversations and to have these types of discussions and to give a voice to those who have stories outside of the entertainment arenas and the things that we can become easily distracted by. So, I just hope that people, once you all finally hear this, you take the knowledge that was given by these two brothers and, you really sit back and, maybe have these conversations, with an entire family, your immediate nuclear family, those in the home with you. I think this is a conversation that we all need to have. So this is just the first one, and these conversations will continue. So I want to thank everyone. When you hear this, I'd like to thank you for listening. Hopefully, you take something away from this, and we're going to start a hashtag of when did you realize you were black. So once these episodes finally come out, and for those of you who are listening, I'll start it on Twitter and social media in general. And hopefully, this is just something that we can all converse about because all of our experiences, they might not be shared. I know all of our experiences are different, but there is some areas in there where we can all relate to everything that's been said. So again, I'd like to thank Russell. I'd like to thank Derek. Again, this has been another episode of the Semi Thoughts podcast. I'd like to thank everyone again for tuning in and listening. And let's keep having meaningful conversations and meaningful dialogue. Till next time. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, man.
All right.
I'm gonna keep y'all updated on everything. Derek Russell has my contact info, so let's stay connected.
Yeah.
I already connected with Russell, but I'd definitely like to connect with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would definitely like to know what you think after you read The Spook Who Sat by the Door. I think you really like that book.
You said The Spook Who Sat by the Door?
Yeah, The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in right now so I don't forget.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting conversation to have, man.
Definitely.
Really, really, really cool book. There's another book called Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison.
Yeah, I need to read that. I don't think I've ever read that.
Man, Invisible Man is about the black man that nobody ever sees. It's about this black man who is fighting in a ring, and but the black man who he wants to be is watching him get his butt whooped. And it really speaks to this exact same conversation we just had, how there's so many layers to being a black man, and just being a black person in general, that it would take eons of time for us to understand all the permutations that go through one consideration for many of us when we do anything, from the way we wear our hair. Like the things that we consider, man, most people don't have to think about that, man. I got classmates, man, who hair be green, purple, blue, red, group. It don't matter. They don't even think about it. One of my homegirls just finished med school and was like, I don't want to do this, and just walked away from it.
Wow.
She finished med school, man, and was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I'm just not going to do it. Like, no problem.
No way.
Yeah, man. Black people got to go through a lot to explaining before they can do something like that.
Yeah.
That's wild to go through all that work. Like, that's still a long ways in the turnaround.
So it don't matter.
That's wild.
Her dad is rich, man. So to that point, man, you know, I think, you know, the conversation and just the overall experience is so, I mean, I told this to Derek, man. I was like, bro, me moving here is just about me being at peace. Like me I don't need to be the savior every day, man. Mm-hmm. I'm just not interested in that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've done that before. I just want to exist for a little while. You know, I'll chime in here and there, but I'm not about to be the dude with the flag. Yeah. You know, every time something regarding black people come up, that I'm the person y'all call.
Right.
Nah, I'm not that guy no more. Those days are over. That's why I couldn't stay here, because I was just like, if I stay in New Orleans, I'm gonna have to become the president or the mayor, and I'm not doing it.
Yeah, they got like a Batman spotlight for you with like an R on it.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Go find Dr. Today. BuzzFeed came out here to do an article, and out of everybody they could have called to comment, they called me. I said, how y'all get my number? All these people in New Orleans. Y'all get my number? Y'all playing too much, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, man, it really just comes down to us having fun. And that's one thing I was going to tell you, Tyler, before I got out of here, man. Mm-hmm. You're going to have some episodes, bro, where it's just black folks just laughing and joking.
Oh, I got some of those.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
You know, or just chilling and vibing.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the heavy conversations are super important, but the laughter is just as important.
Absolutely.
You know, the freedom is just as important. We talk about the mental, you know, definitely when I hit my psychiatry years, we're going to have some conversations on SIPmyTHOUGHTS about mental health in black men, bro.
Yeah.
You know, and then obviously in black boys, we'll do that.
For sure. Let's do it.
Yeah, man.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate y'all. I'm hungry, man. I'm finna go grab me some food.
Yeah, you and me too, man. I cooked some gumbo today too.
Ooh, I need it.
No invitation?
Right.
Hey, look, I'm gonna be in India in a couple weeks, man. Come on, man. You can literally come by the crib and pick up some, man. It ain't that. You gonna have that invite, bro.
I need that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Ain't nobody tell you to move away from the South, man.
Right.
You moving to Atlanta now, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you gotta be there? When you
End of the month. End of the month. March 28th.
Oh, you started on my wife's birthday.
Yeah, March 28th.
Boy, T gonna be making the big bucks, man.
Man,
I was about to say, congrats. It's a move.
I appreciate it. I'm trying to do some networking, man. Kind of keep getting this thing out there. Keep meeting more people, man. Try to take this thing to the next level.
It'll happen. You almost to the point of having not sponsorships, but at least paid advertisements during your podcast.
Mm-hmm. I'm close to 13,000 downloads, man. Finally.
Yeah. What is it? You got hit 100,000 before they start looking at you for paid advertisement, or what is it?
Probably so. I think it just depends on the right audience. I mean, just right ears, right time, all that type of stuff. Everything coming together. So
yeah, I'm gonna put you in touch with another young brother, man, who got a podcast. It's called Rugged Evo. Run by a brother out of Florida. And maybe I could like swap where like, you know, you advertise his podcast and he advertise yours. Or the two y'all can hop on the Instagram live together and you talk about your podcast, he talk about his, and y'all kind of gain followership that way. You know what I'm saying?
we can do that. I'm interested.
Yeah, so I'll make that introduction probably tomorrow morning.
Cool.
All right, let me go eat some dinner with my family.
All right, brother.
Early next week, you know, next Friday is a big day.
Yeah, man. I'm like so excited. It's like one of those kind of weeks where I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
We booking flights to Indy soon as we find out, because I know that's planned up, so I ain't tripping.
Yeah, the Corona's on the ready. So
yeah, good, man. Hey, we looking forward to it, bro. You got it.
I know. Sir. Couple days away, man.
Yeah.
All right, T.I.
All right, y'all. Take care.
Take care.